Hi there and welcome back. We're continuing our look at CSS pseudo elements, specifically the before and after pseudo element, and different cool things we can do with them. So we've already looked at just generally what they are and how they work. We've looked at the content property, and now we're going to be looking at them as design elements. So we're going to be seeing how I created this red bar with no extra markup, and it sort of hides. We can still see our heading, and it will follow our screen around. And then we're going to be looking at these two cards here where we're going to be doing these hover effects like this. So it darkens around, we get these lines growing in and out, and there's no extra markup done. It's all done with CSS to get all this cool stuff happening. So welcome. If you haven't seen the last two videos, I'd strongly recommend you check them out, especially the first one where we really look at how the whole before and after thing work, because it's kind of weird and not everyone really realizes how they're working behind the scenes. If you're new here, my name is Kevin and I make videos like this every single week. And yeah, as you know, we're looking at the pseudo elements here. So before I dive deep into this, I just want to give props to this Code Drops article. So if I come over here, this is where I got the idea of using pseudo elements in fun ways. And there's just lots of awesome hover effects they're doing here. They have two sets of stuff. You can even go to the original article to get a bit more information and sort of an explanation on how they did all this. So if you want some more stuff, please check these guys out. All right, so let's jump right into it. What I want to, just before we get into the code itself, one thing that I do want to look at here is just I have put this universal selector to alter my box sizing for border box just to make it easier for me. This means if I add padding or a border to something, it doesn't add to the size of something. It's included in with the content itself. So that just will stop weird little glitches from happening. Now, one thing you might not have realized is if you do the universal selector, it won't include the before and after elements. You actually have to universally select those as well if you want to get the border box working on those. Other than that, I will be using Sass to write this. I'm not going to be doing anything too complicated, or SCSS I should say, and just for some nesting on some things because it's going to make my life a little bit easier. If you don't know about Sass, you should still be able to follow along without any major issues. So we're going to start up with the title area up here, which is just a fun little effect that looks kind of cool. And it's nice that you don't need an extra markup or anything to do it. We don't need a div as a background and then a separate background, like that. We can control them sort of separately, which is really, really nice. So just quickly, if we look at my markup here, all I have up here is an H1 class intro, and there's nothing else there. I don't have any divs. I don't have anything else over there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go find here. I have my div class intro. On here, all I've done so far is a position relative, and I've also put a display inline block just because I want to control. It makes it easier for the size of it. I have a text align center on the whole document also. So what I want to do is I want to control the before and the after on here. So because I'm using SCSS, I can do that like this, and do and before and after. Both of my before and after are going to be sharing properties. If you're not used to Sass, this would be the same thing as coming down underneath and just writing out intro before and writing my code that way. So if you want to follow along, don't nest yours inside there, just write it out like this. So I have my before and my after, and a lot of the things that we're going to have on these will be exactly the same. So such as the content property, and because we're using them as design elements, my content will be nothing. I don't want any content in there, but as we know now through the other videos we've seen, we need to use this or else we don't have anything to manipulate. We're also going to give them a height of 100%. Display block, because that's going to make our lives a little bit easier. And let's give them a, just so I can see it, or we'll see them in a second. Let's actually separate. I just want to put backgrounds on these so we can actually see them. So my and before, we'll give that one a background of light blue, and after, we'll give that one a background of, the final color will be my color red here. So we'll just do that. Now we don't see anything yet. I've given them a height, but I haven't done anything else with them. There's no height, there's no width to them. So here I'm just going to switch. I'm going to make the position absolute because I do want to be able to control exactly where they're going to be. And for the moment, just so we can see if these are working, let's start on this one here and give this one a width of 100%. So there, we can actually see that my block is coming in. And actually, we can probably give this one a background too. Background, oh, it has a background. Not a background, I mean a width. Width of 100% for the moment. And there we go. So we can see I have my two boxes. Now, this isn't exactly how I want them to be positioned, obviously. So they're display block, but because they're position absolute and my width is 100%, it's matching the width of my, I'm going to turn off the before one so I can see my text. So it's actually matching the width of my text. And this is the reason I gave this display inline block. If I'd done display block on this, that red bar would stretch the whole size, which is what I want, but it would become really hard for me to match the width of my text with my before. So we're going to leave this on display inline block. But for my width on this, instead of 100%, I'm just going to put 100 vertical width. And now I get this annoying side scrolling problem, but this is going to be 100% of the screen size. The only thing is I need to move it into the right spot. So luckily that's not too hard to do. I'm going to do a left on this of 50%. And that should line up the left side of this box dead in the middle of the screen. Because this is center aligned, my here's generic heading is center aligned. So by doing the left 50%, it's putting this right in the middle of my screen. And then what I can do is the very useful transform, translate x, -50%. This is a nice trick to center something on my screen. So you can see I have no vertical scrolling now, or horizontal scrolling, I should say. And so what's happening is this is moving it to the right dead middle of the screen. So the left side of it is dead in the middle of the screen. And then this is moving it 50% of its own width, negative the other way. So the first one is dealing with the absolute positioning. So it's looking right here. And then the second one is looking at its own width. And because it's 100 vertical width, it's going to move back exactly to where we want it to be. The only thing is I want it to be underneath my text. So I can also add a top 0. And there we go. It is now in place. Now obviously I can't read my text, and that's a bit of a problem. So I'm going to turn my light blue back on for a second, just so we can see that it is working. But the only problem is my light blue is behind my red text, just because this is before and this one is after. So what I'm going to do is, one thing I could do is actually switch these around to be the other way around, and that would solve that problem. But I have to use a Z index on this anyway. So a Z index on my light blue we'll do a -1 on that one actually. And we'll come over on this one and do a Z index of -2. And that's just going to place the red one behind the blue one. The reason I'm going with negative here is if I put a 0 on that, it's at the same Z index of my intro, and my intro does have a Z index on it now, defaulting to 0, just because it has the position relative. So what's happening here is, because this is 0 and it's in with this, it just ends up overlapping. So I'm just going to give that a -1. So it sort of orders. I have my content, then I have my -1 Z index, so it's being pushed backwards. And then I have my -2, which is being pushed behind that as well. Now with this, obviously I don't want this to be light blue. I actually want it to be white. And you can see it's starting to come together. I have this really annoying 1 pixel line underneath. I'm not actually sure why that happens, because this and this, the white and the red, should have the exact same height. And I think in Chrome this doesn't actually happen. But it just means that I'm going to actually remove my height from this one and put it on here instead. So this one will have a height of 101%, whereas this one can stick with a height of 100%, just to make sure that it's a little bit, the white is a little bit bigger and it's covering that up. You could also use top and bottom on these to play around with it instead of doing a height. Now the one problem is it's way too close to those. So on my before here, so I'm just going to come on here and say a left of like -20 pixels, a right of -20 pixels. And does this, oh, I'm going to take my width off on that one actually. And there we go. So I'm getting -20s, giving my space here and my space here. Now, as I mentioned, the advantage with this is, here is, if I put if I change the content inside of this, it's still going to grow and shrink with it, which is really, really handy. It does have one little flaw though, I'll let you know. If it breaks onto 2 lines, the background thing will disappear. Just because of the way the inline block is working and a couple of other things. Basically what's happening is it's too large now because of the way it works. So you could always build a media query in and play around a little bit with this here. Because I think if I made this like that, you can see it's starting to come back in. It's just this white thing has gotten too big. So a simple media query could always fix that in a way. It could also depend on how things are breaking, and you know, this could be set up a little bit differently, but it just gives you an idea of what we can achieve without any extra markup. This is just with an H1, we get this cool effect that will grow and shrink with my text and won't have me have to do anything. On to the more fun effect though of my card title. So right now on these cards, the only thing I have happening is when I hover on top and off, the card title is appearing and disappearing. And let's go look at the structure of my card first. So basically I have a div class card. It has an image in it. So we can see the 2 pictures here. These are my 2 pictures. And then I have a div of card text. And my card text just has the title and the body. So the title there and the body here. I actually don't like this yellow picture. So let's change that to, whoops, that's not going to fit. $3.99. I think it'd just look a little bit nicer. Yeah, we'll go with that one. So I just have the card title coming up on hover. So if we come and look down here, and this pen is available if you want to see how I did these cards, because I'm not going to look into it in too much detail. Once again, I'm going to be using a position relative on it. And there's my card image. So it's just a max width of 100% to make sure it fits. Display block, and oh, this transition, it's not doing anything right now. But it will be shortly. The card text has the opacity, so when I hover on top, it's going from an opacity of 0 to an opacity of 1, so we can see it. And that's about it. There's nothing too fancy going on with that. The reason I have this opacity on my card image here is because I wanted to add one thing. Because when we hover, depending on you see this one's really hard to read the text, and this one's not too bad. But we want to make it a lot easier to read the text. So card image, what we can do is actually change the opacity to like a 0.7, let's say. And if we want that to transition, we should put it here too. I like doing it without the hover first, just so I can see what it's actually going to look like. And I'm going to lower that a lot actually, 0.4 maybe. I want it to be pretty dark. So on my card itself, I have a gray background, a dark gray background. So when when we're going to do, let's just do it now. Hover. Oh, this should be 1. So my opacity on the image is 1, but when I hover on top, the opacity drops down. So the gray comes in, which makes it easier for me to read the text. There we go. It's working on both of them. So that's already a nice little effect, but I think the sliding things and all of that will be really awesome. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to come on my card here. And what we want to do, once again, I'm going to set up both my before and my after at the same time, because a lot of them are going to share the same properties. Once again, we're going to have no content on them. We're going to give them a position, posy absolute. And I want to see what I'm doing, because right now we can't see them at all. So let's just give them a background of, we'll do pink, just so I can see what I'm doing. So let's give it a top of 0, bottom 0, left 0, right 0. And there we go, we can see it. And I think what I'm going to do is actually take this pink background off of both of them, because the first one we're going to play with is the before. So we'll work on the before first, and then if we need to, we'll put the background on the after one after. So right now it's covering the whole thing, and I don't actually want it to be doing that. I want to move it in a little bit. So I'm going to switch this to like 1.25 M. and we'll just switch all of those over. So it's not actually going all the way to the edges of my box. It's taking up, it's going glitchy. Oh, because of the way this is, doesn't matter too much. Don't worry about the glitches. They'll be fixed once we're done with this. So we can see where it's positioned on the card. And now what I want it to do is, instead of having a background, obviously we don't want it to have a background, but I'm going to leave the background on to start with, and then I'm going to switch it over to how we're actually going to get the effect out of it, just to leave a little bit of fun. So on my before here, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change its scale. And to do that, it shouldn't be scale, it should be transform scale. And we're going to do, if I do 0, whoops. If I do a 0 on it, we just don't see it at all. Now I want to do my hover. Now to do the hover, I'm going to do and hover before. So just in case you're not used to Sass, what this is card hover before. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm working on when I hover on top of my card. So when I hover on top, I want to change what's happening with my before. So we're going to change the scale on this. So let's do a transform scale and transform that up to 1. And we'll come back to here and do a transition, transform, ease out 250, ease out 250 milliseconds. So now when I hover on top, you'll see that it's growing in and out like that, which is kind of cool. It's a fun effect on its own, but it's not really what I want to do. What I want is I want those lines to sort of grow in an interesting way. So a cool thing you can do with scale that I only learned about recently is I'm going to do scale 0, 1. And on over here, we're going to do a 1, 1. So what this means is it's starting at a scale, the X is on a scale of 0, but the Y is still at 100%. And then when I hover, both of them go up to 100%. So if we go and look now, it's growing from the middle because my Y, which is the up and down, is always at 100%. It's only my X that's changing. So we see it doing this cool little effect like that. Now, that's pretty much what I'm after. The thing is, we don't want a big pink box to be growing in and out like that. We want some lines. So I'm going to turn off my pink background here, and I'm going to give this some borders. So on my before, we'll do a border left. I'm trying to think. No, I want the border top, not the border left. Border top, 1 pixel solid white, and my border bottom, 1 pixel solid white. So now, when I do that, you can see it's those lines that are growing instead. So my lines are growing in and out. So that's really cool. Now we want to do the exact same thing on my after. So we'll come down and we'll do my, I'm going to do my after here just because I like keeping all my hover stuff together. So and after. So I'm actually just going to copy this whole thing, copy that, paste it in, but I'm going to switch it because now they're doing the exact same thing, but I want it to grow up and down. So I'm going to put this to 1, this one over to 0, and let's just copy this, paste this, and I'm going to change this to after. So now when I hover, I made a mistake somewhere here. Oh, my borders should be a border left and a border right. So now when I do it, you can see they're growing up and down, and the other ones are growing left and right. So I get that box that's forming. You could definitely just leave it there and have a box like that. I sort of wanted the edges to cross a little bit instead of like overlapping a little bit. So I think it's a little bit more fun here, just to say that the scale changes a bit more. So I'm going to do like a 1.05 on this and a 0.05 here. So that should, you can see now in the corners, there's like they overlap each other. You get that nice little overlapping effect on the corners. Now I just realized when I was doing this, I didn't realize why it was happening, and I just thought of it now. But if I'm hovering on top of this, you can see that it's not really working. The background's coming. It's only when I'm on top of the outside part. And it's because I made a bit of a mistake right at the beginning. So let's go and fix that. And I think it's a good little learning experience. So here I put the hover effect on when I'm hovering on my image itself. So the problem here is, here I'm on top of my image, but here I'm on top of my after or before. They're on top of my image. So it's not registering as hovering on top of my image. It's only registering it as hovering on top of the before or the after thing. But out here, it's working. And that's why the whole time I was doing the demo, you saw my mouse that was out here. And I knew I'd had this working before. So I was a little bit confused by that. And the mistake that I made was, it shouldn't be when I'm hovering here. What I should be doing, and I'm actually going to steal this away a little bit, we'll leave it here, is just, I want it to be when I hover on top of my card, so card hover, my card image that's inside has the opacity, what was it? Something like that. So when I hover anywhere on top of my card, the card image opacity will lower, and then we get that nice little effect. And that's it. That's how you make a really, this cool little heading bar. I like that more as a little hacky type of thing. And then there's just nice little hover effect on this. It's just some of the possibilities that are out there. But it's really cool that we can have a card with really simple markup, and you still get the background that can change and these lines growing on it, the text appearing and disappearing. Go out and explore what you can do with pseudo elements and try different things. There's a million different things you can do with them. They're really awesome design elements, as you saw in this video and in the previous ones. Really nice ways to improve your designs and do really fun things with them. So I hope you liked this video. If you did like it, please hit the thumbs up and let me know. Just a quick word, if you're not used to using Sass and you're a little bit intrigued by this, I am working on a course to teach you Sass. It's not ready yet, but there is a link to it in the description below where you can find out more information on it, and you can go and sign up to find out more about it when it's getting closer to launch. And if you do sign up for that when the course does launch, you'll also get a nice little discount on the course for whoever is on my list. With that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. And whatever you do, don't forget until next time to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.